Howdy folks, I hope you all had a good weekend and welcome to another episode of Mingles with Jingles. So, how to begin? I know. You know you've done something pretty special when in the middle of a new patch you introduce a new bug to Fallout 76 where every time you reload a weapon in combat you lose armor value. You know, armor value is the kind of thing that's quite useful to have when you're in combat. And combat's the kind of situation where typically you find yourself reloading your weapons quite often, so even by Bethesda standards, this is a pretty hilarious bug. And so, in the same week where Bethesda introduces another new bug into Fallout 76 that's pretty spectacular, even by the high standards of all of the other bugs that exist in that game, and in that week, nobody's talking about Fallout 76, because the internet is on fire over what you did, then you know you've done something pretty special. What on earth can you possibly be talking about, Jingles? Well, yeah. The too long didn't read version, for those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, or who do but didn't watch the video that I did on Friday in response, it's the USS Puerto Rico and the new dockyard feature in World of Warships. Now, I did a whole half-hour video on this dumpster fire on Friday, so I'm not going to repeat the whole thing here. I'll just summarise the situation, and then we'll talk a bit more about how it could have been avoided, what Wargaming could have done better, things that I didn't cover in the half-hour video on Friday, as well as to, correct some of the mistakes that I made in the half-hour video on Friday. But the situation is this. New patch arrives. Everybody quite looking forward to the dockyard feature where you actually go through the construction process on the brand new USS Puerto Rico battlecruiser, a Tier 10 premium. And based on feedback from the test server, where myself and others produced videos commenting on what an amazing feature it was and how it looked entirely reasonable and accessible, a lot of people were really looking forward to taking advantage of the new dockyard feature to construct their Christmas gift premium Tier 10 battlecruiser, the USS Puerto Rico. I think it's reasonable to say that if anybody genuinely expected that they were going to be getting this ship for free without a serious grind, we were probably fooling ourselves a little. I mean, it's a Tier 10. There have been grinds in the past for other ships at Tier 7, 8 and 9 that were doable, but they weren't easy. So, I think, in retrospect, the expectation that it was going to be easy to grind a Tier 10 battlecruiser was a little naive. And yet we were kind of led to believe that it was going to be relatively easy because it was presented as a Christmas gift as the main feature of the patch, the whole dockyard thing and the Puerto Rico. And when videos from the test server went up and people streamed from the test server showing the construction process and how reasonable and accessible it looked, Wargaming didn't think it might be a good idea to set the record straight at any point. They were entirely happy for the hype to continue building and for people to continue thinking that this looks quite nice, so I invest a little bit of gold at the start, not a lot, but not a small amount either, and then I do a bit of grinding. I either have myself a brand new premium Tier 10 battlecruiser, or maybe I didn't have enough time to finish the grind, in which case I can pay some more gold, but a reasonable amount, and I've still got myself a brand new premium Tier 10 battlecruiser. And this is exactly what people were expecting, because this is exactly what people were told, and at no point did Wargaming put their hand up and say, well, actually, no. The event went live, and what on the test server were 3 1,000 gold boosters ended up costing you 24,000 gold on the live server. And that was just the start. And because people had been primed to believe that the grind was going to be reasonable, and knowing that the boosters were more valuable the earlier you applied them, a lot of people spent a lot of gold on either 1, 2 or all 3 of the gold boosters, thinking to themselves, okay, got myself a good start, now I can just finish the directive grind to get the rest of the construction complete at my leisure. Because, once again, that's how it had been presented to them. And then people started looking at what you actually had to do to get the directives complete. And a lot of people, presumably a lot better at mathematics than I am, sat down, looked through the directives, and tried to figure out exactly what it was going to take in order to unlock this ship for free. But nobody seemed to be able to agree on exactly what it was that it was going to take and when it was going to have to be done by. Because the way the event had been structured, with all of the different competing factors involved, just made it incredibly difficult for any one person to come up with a definitive answer as to what it was going to take to get this ship for free. So if you had already sunk some money into buying 1, 2, or all 3 of those initial gold boosters, and you were trying to structure your holiday period game time around working out which of those directives you needed to get done to make sure that you hadn't wasted your money, there was just no way for you to figure it out. And so with an absence of any clear direction, all you could really do was grind like crazy and hope it was going to be enough. Except the one thing that all of those budding internet mathematicians did agree on, even if they didn't agree on the precise numbers, was that there was no fucking way anybody was ever going to get this ship for free. Well, okay, the almighty spreadsheet does say that it's technically possible, but there's a world of difference between technically possible and practically possible. I'll give you an example of what I mean, because within a couple of days of this dumpster fire erupting, Wargaming did publish on Reddit a list of exactly what you would be required to do based on how many of the initial 3 gold boosters you were prepared to put money on in order to get the Puerto Rico unlocked by the end of the event period. So, if you planned on getting this ship for free, you were going to have to complete the first directive before construction on the ship commenced, so you'd have 3 days to do that. And that should be quite doable. Directive 2, 3, 4 and 5 would also have to be completed within 3 days of the directives becoming available. Directive 6 would have to be complete within 4 days of the directive becoming available. The final directive, Directive 7, would have to be completed at the very latest 24 hours before the overall end of the event. You would also have to finish 20 daily missions and collect all rewards from daily shipments, and you would have to spend the shipbuilding tokens that you got from doing the directives and the daily shipments the second you got them. So it was technically possible to get the Puerto Rico for free, providing you completed the directives within the timescales specified by Wargaming on Reddit. But nobody's going to get those directives complete in the timescales specified by Wargaming on Reddit. Maybe, if you're a Billy No Mates super unicum with no friends, no family, and no desire to spend any time doing anything other than playing World of Warships every minute you're awake over the holiday period for the entire duration of the event. Maybe you could get the first 6 done. And that's a fairly big maybe. But nobody is going to complete the 7th. To get the 7th directive complete, you are going to have to accumulate the eye-watering total of 1.4 million free experience. That's free experience, which isn't free, but more on that later. Not experience, not even base experience, no, free experience. This is the experience that you earn at a rate of 5% of all of the other experience that you earn. 1.4 million free experience. That is enough free experience to unlock in one go every Japanese battleship in the game, from the Tier 3 Kawachi all the way up to the Tier 10 Yamato, twice, right? And in order to accumulate that much free experience just in the process of playing the game normally, you would have to earn 28 million experience, which is enough to unlock every ship in the game. And you would have to do that in a week. Now, of course, there are ways to boost the amount of free experience that you gain. There are certain camouflages, there are certain signal flags, but those things cost money, don't they? Yes, of course they do. And then there's the way that the various different tasks within each of the directives were set up to be as difficult as possible, with an almost complete lack of synergy between them. Even in the first directive, the easiest one, the most achievable directive, there's a disconnect between the various different tasks. For example, in Directive 1 you have two tasks that sound very similar. One of them requires that you set enemy ships on fire a certain number of times, and the other one requires that you do a certain amount of fire damage to enemy ships. So naturally you think, well, this is easy, 2 directives for the price of 1. But then you complete one of the objectives and you think, hang on, why didn't I complete the other one? And then you look at the other one in slightly more detail, and it turns out that these are 2 objectives that look very, very similar. They look like there's a lot of synergy going on between them, except they both have to be completed in different classes of ship. And that's in Directive 1. And it gets worse and worse and worse to the point of utter ridiculousness as you go through the succeeding directives. And then another pattern starts to become apparent. The whole, well, these directives look really difficult, but maybe I can throw some money at them to make them easier. Like the free experience grind in Directive 7, where nobody alive is ever going to get 1.4 million free experience through the normal course of playing the game. You're clearly going to have to throw money at Wargaming for camos and signal flags that buff your free experience gain. But you even get this in the first 3 directives, because the Puerto Rico isn't the only premium ship that's being given away in the Christmas and New Year patch. There's also a premium Tier 7 Italian cruiser, the Gorizia, and you unlock that by grinding out the first 3 directives. And it's here where we see something that Wargaming have done before in World of Warships. They present a brand new premium ship, in this case the Italian Tier 7 cruiser, the Gorizia, and there's a brand new event with directives, and those directives contain tasks that include tasks that can only be completed in this ship. And those tasks are significantly easier than all of the other tasks contained within the same directive. So if you want to get directives 1, 2 and 3 completed as quickly and easily as possible, use the Gorizia. Oh, awesome. How do I get the Gorizia? Well, you complete directives 1, 2 and 3. Hang on a minute. You're telling me, are you seriously telling me that in order to get the ship that I need to complete directives 1, 2 and 3 as quickly and easily as possible, I have to complete directives 1, 2 and 3? Yes. Do you not see the problem with the logic there? Well, you can buy it in the premium shop. Which is, of course, exactly what they want you to do. They want you to throw even more money in order to buy a premium ship that you could unlock for free just by playing the game, but they've put you back up against the wall with the directive grind for the Puerto Rico. And if you want to get those first 3 directives done as quickly as possible, you're going to go to the premium shop, you're going to pay real money for a ship that you could have gotten for free just by playing the game, because your back is up against the wall, in order to get the Puerto Rico done as quickly as humanly possible, even though it isn't humanly possible. But thanks to the way the directives were set up, it was virtually impossible. I mean, many people tried to calculate it, none of them could agree on the exact numbers. The only thing everybody knew was you were going to need to get these directives done as quickly as you could. And so, of course, not knowing any better, I'm sure a lot of people went to the premium shop and they bought the Gorizia just so they could get those first 3 directives done. And these, of course, are probably people who spent anything up to 24,000 gold on the first 3 gold boosters in order to try to get this thing done as quickly as humanly possible, not realising that it's not humanly possible. And it's here where you start to see the 2 types of predatory and anti-consumer business practices that Wargaming have been employing throughout the course of this event. The first is the fear of missing out. Fear of missing out is what made people spend money on those first 3 gold boosters. Fear of missing out is what made people buy the Gorizia in the premium store rather than just getting it for free by playing through the first 3 directives. So fear of missing out has probably already convinced an awful lot of people to, well, based on the current cost of gold doubloons in the premium shop and the selling price of the Gorizia, this has caused people to spend anything up to £100, or slightly more than €100, or a lot more than $100 on the Puerto Rico grind already, before construction even begins. And the only thing that that money will have bought them is 30% of the Puerto Rico. There's still 70% of the construction to go. And so this is where we come to the second of Wargaming's anti-consumer and predatory business practices. This is what we call the sunk cost fallacy, because it is absolutely no accident whatsoever that if you haven't completed the construction of the Puerto Rico when the event ends, regardless of how much time, effort, and money you have sunk into it, you don't get the Puerto Rico. You must complete construction. If you don't, kiss it all goodbye. This is not like what they did in World of Tanks recently. Brand new premium tier 8 American tank called the Renegade, I think it was. And there were a bunch of directives of equivalent difficulty that had to be completed to unlock that tank for free. And realistically, hardly anybody was going to unlock it for free. And so everybody was complaining, oh, how am I going to get my free tank? Well, you're not going to get your free tank. But you shouldn't look at it as a free tank that you're not going to get, because the way World of Tanks did it, and once again, this is I never thought I'd be saying World of Tanks did something better than World of Warships, but in this case it's absolutely 100% true. So, credit where credit's due. Well done, World of Tanks. The way it was structured over there was that, let's say there are 5 directives, and you complete the first 3. Well, that's a 60% discount off the cost of the tank. The resources that you'd put into getting those first 3 directives done, and I can't remember if it was 5 or 6 directives, whatever, just for the sake of example, it wasn't wasted effort. Everything that you'd done towards getting that tank by the time the event ended counted. It was worth something. It wasn't just written off in the way that everything that you've done and paid to get the Puerto Rico, if you haven't unlocked it at the end of the event period, is written off. Kiss it goodbye. Forget it ever existed. We hope you enjoyed playing. Thank you for your custom. Please come again. What's that? What's that? You're crying because of all the time, effort, and money that you put into getting this ship, and you just failed at the last hurdle? Well, because we like you, we're going to give you the opportunity to pay us even more money to finish the grind for gold. That is the sunk cost fallacy. The expectation, because it's true, that people who have committed time, money, and effort to getting something, if it looks like they're not going to get it, they'll probably give you a little bit more, just to make sure that everything that they've done up to that point hasn't been for nothing. First, they suck you in with the fear of missing out, and that's exactly the way this entire thing has been engineered from start to finish. They suck you in at the start with the fear of missing out to get you to invest early. And then, when the full scale of exactly what it is that you've just gotten yourself into sinks in, and you realise there is no fucking way you are ever going to complete this, that's when they throw you a lifeline with the sunk cost fallacy. What's that? You're not going to get it complete? Oh, and you've already invested so much gold and time. That's a shame. Well, if you just hand over some more gold, we can finish the ship for you. It would be a shame for everything that you've done so far to go to waste. And people don't want to feel stupid. They don't want to feel ripped off. Which is ironic, because that's exactly what happens if you fall for the sunk cost fallacy. Well, what you should be doing is just cutting your losses and getting the fuck out. Learning your lesson. But people don't like to think that they're stupid. And that's exactly why the sunk cost fallacy works. Although in this case it's not a completely fair comparison. Because the terms and conditions were so impossible to understand, like I said, many mathematicians tried to figure out exactly what was required to get this ship for free. None of them could agree. Which just meant that more and more people fell for the fear of missing out and invested early. And are now probably going to fall for the sunk cost fallacy, because they don't want to feel like they were getting ripped off, even though that's exactly what they're doing by falling for the sunk cost fallacy. So how could this have been done better? Well, first you have to ask yourself the question, better for who? Better for us, or better for Wargaming? Well, it's already worked out pretty well for Wargaming. And I'm not saying that there are already hundreds and thousands of, well, I don't know, maybe there are hundreds of people already sailing around in their Puerto Ricos because they basically just threw gold at it on the first day until it was unlocked. $300. $300 for one ship. Fuck me. But you know what? It's your money. I'm not going to tell you how to spend it. But even that's not what I'm talking about here. When I say Wargaming have already done quite well out of this, I'm talking about the vastly larger number of people who fell for the fear of missing out. Got into the shipbuilding process early, bought the first 3 gold boosters before construction process had even begun, started grinding out the objectives, realised they could get them done faster if they bought the Gorizia, so they went to the premium shop. They bought the Gorizia instead of just getting it for free by doing the first 3 directives. They've got your money for that now, and you're not getting it back. And if you don't cut your losses and get out now, they're going to be getting even more money from you when the event ends and you realise that you're going to have to hand over even more gold to finish the ship. And before I get your expectations up, that isn't going to change. Right? They're not going to change the way this event works. Unfortunately, if you have already sunk money into the Puerto Rico grind, and if there is no way you're ever going to get the grind completed because, you know, you have a life, you have either lost everything that you put into it, or you're going to have to hand over more money to finish it. That, I'm afraid, is the way that it is, and it is not going to change. However, they could still easily have done this so much better simply by not allowing everybody to continue to think that the grind was going to be as reasonable and achievable as it appeared to be on the test server. It still wouldn't have been popular. It's still easily, by far, the worst grind anybody has ever seen thus far in World of Warships, but they could have managed expectations a damn sight better simply by saying, before the event went live, right after the first videos appeared on YouTube, the first live streams on Twitch showing the construction process, they could have just said, hold your horses, this is the test server, the values that you see here are placeholders only, it's not going to be quite as easy as this. Wargaming knew exactly what was going to be required in order to complete this ship for free, and they knew that nobody was ever going to achieve that. They knew exactly what was required to complete this ship within the event period if you only bought 1 booster, 2, or all 3 of the boosters. They had that information, obviously, of course they did. That's exactly the sort of information that should have been published at the start of the event. Hell, it should have been published before the event, in all of the pre-release promotional material that they published. That should have been included, so that people could see exactly what it was that they needed to do, that they were prepared to do, exactly how much they were prepared to invest in the construction of the ship in order to guarantee that they'd be able to do it before the end of the period. But that information was withheld until the internet dumpster fire erupted, when it was only released as a form of damage control, at which point, of course, it was far too late. But as for the actual mechanics of the event itself, even though they're not going to change, and as I said earlier, anything that you have thus far invested in the construction of the Puerto Rico is wasted unless you're prepared to hand over even more gold to Wargaming at the end of the event to take care of any unfinished construction. In a way, I suppose you could make the argument that that's more or less what World of Tanks did with the Tier 8 Renegade Premium American tank. The number of directives that you completed for that tank weren't wasted. They basically counted as a discount towards the final price of the tank in the premium shop. You could argue that that's more or less what's happening with the Puerto Rico, because you've got the initial gold booster investment, anything up to 24,000 gold. Then you've got the various different directives for shipbuilding tokens, which, again, buy boosters. So that 35,000 gold price that you're looking at to complete the Puerto Rico right now, if you've bought the first 3 gold boosters, it's not going to be 35,000 gold at the end of the period, because your gold boosters have bought you extra shipbuilding points every day. So that number's going to go down. It's still going to be a big number, but it's not going to be 35,000. But even though that premium Renegade tank in World of Tanks is the most expensive Tier 8 premium tank that they've ever offered for sale. The comparison still breaks down due to issues of scale and transparency. Transparency because if it had been presented like that right from the start, people would have still been pissed off due to the whole size of the grind involved, but they wouldn't have been feeling cheated and misled. So that covers transparency. As for scale, yeah, I think it's the M54 Renegade. It's the most expensive Tier 8 premium tank that's ever been offered for sale in the premium shop. I think at the start of the mission marathon for it, the price worked out to something like $72. And that's a lot of money for a pixel tank. And yes, I know that they have offered packages significantly more expensive than that, but they were packages, not just a tank. Still, $72 is a damn sight less than the $300 you'll be expected to hand over for the Puerto Rico if you want to buy that outright. So yeah, scale and transparency. Another way this could have been done better, and I mean better for us, not better for Wargaming, is if they'd extended the event period. Made it a long-term building project rather than a time-gated event. If they'd made the Gorizia the focus of the award for the objectives, that was your grind it for free Christmas present ship, and they had the Puerto Rico as a long-term building project, I don't know, 3 or 4 months, people would have still happily paid money for boosters. And the sheer outrage that people are feeling when they look at the grind in some of those directives that you're expected to complete in the space of a couple of weeks. 1.4 million free XP. Yeah, good luck with that. You know, if you had 3 or 4 months, there would have still been a lot of people who wouldn't have completed the grind, and who would be handing over gold at the end of it, and wouldn't be feeling cheated at having to hand over gold at the end of it because they'd had a clear run at getting those objectives done in a reasonable time frame. People wouldn't be feeling cheated. People wouldn't be feeling like they were being forced to hand over money. People wouldn't feel as if they were being misled and manipulated into handing over money. People might be saying, in fact I fully expect people would have been saying, because the dockyard itself is a fantastic idea, it's just the way that it's been introduced into the game that sucks, and people would be saying, you know what, this is a really, really good way to introduce new premium ships. Can we have it like this again in future, please? Instead, what's happening is that Wargaming are now being mentioned in the same breath as Electronic Arts, Activision Blizzard, Bethesda, and Ubisoft. And I've got to be brutally honest with you here, Wargaming, that does not look good on you. That is not the kind of company that you want to be associating with. World of Warships has thus far managed to navigate, pun intended, some extremely tricky waters, because those other companies that I've mentioned, they don't do free-to-play games, but they monetize their full-price games like free-to-play games. In fact, some of the worst excesses of the free-to-play market can be most clearly seen in these AAA full-price games from these kind of scumbag publishers. And yet, thus far, despite the fact that it is a free-to-play game, World of Warships has somehow managed to stay remarkably clean, despite the fact that it is a free-to-play title. Exactly the kind of title where you would expect to see this kind of predatory anti-consumer business practice. And yet, there have been a couple of hiccups along the way, but nothing major. World of Warships has managed to stay relatively clean all these years. It's never managed to get for itself the same kind of negative publicity that World of Tanks is easily capable of doing to itself on a bad day. Do you remember the Sir Foch incident a couple of years ago? For those of you who might be new around here, Sir Foch was a World of Tanks community contributor who published an extremely angry video about, there was a premium Tier 8 American heavy tank, the Chrysler K, and it was pretty clearly a tank that had one purpose in life, and that was to sell gold ammunition. It was so heavily armoured that you needed gold ammunition to damage it, and its gun was so shit, it needed to fire gold ammo to damage anything else. And Sir Foch's video was, let's just say he wasn't afraid of dropping F-bombs. Right? World of Tanks' response to his video was to threaten him with a DCMA copyright strike for something that was not a copyright violation to get him to shut up and take the video down. Yes, they went there. This generated unprecedented levels of outrage directed against Wargaming, so much so that major news outlets started picking up on the story. Hell, even Jim fucking Sterling's son did an episode of the Jinquisition dedicated towards covering the subject. This isn't anywhere near that level of dumpster fire. I know Reddit's on fire, but Reddit's always on fire about something. And I know that we all feel absolutely fucking outraged, but nobody else really gives a shit. Seriously, they don't. Google it if you don't believe me. Just type into Google, Puerto Rico, World of Warships, look for results from the last week, and the only people who give a shit are us. No major news outlets are picking up this story. And, well, why should they? Oh look, a free-to-play games developer is using free-to-play business tactics. That's not a news story. Sorry. It isn't. The main reason why we feel so outraged, and I'm not saying we shouldn't feel outraged, we absolutely should, but even Akazuki feels outraged. Did you hear that? Akazuki? What do you think of these scumbags? Yeah, I know, they're scum. They are. But scum are acting like scum. Nobody apart from us is surprised by this. And we're only really surprised by this because World of Warships has been, on the whole, pretty good up until now. But they have finally crossed that line. And I'm not for a second saying that they're in the same ballpark as Electronic Arts and the Star Wars Battlefront 2 loot box fiasco. While they might not now be in that ballpark, they're definitely now playing in the same league. And if you think I'm exaggerating here, do you remember during the Star Wars Battlefront 2 loot box fiasco when somebody from Electronic Arts was trotted out onto Reddit to try to present EA's take on the subject? And they said, I can't remember the exact words, but they said that the whole grindy nature of Star Wars Battlefront 2, which encouraged people to try to skip the grind by buying loot boxes, but the whole grind was there so that you'd feel a sense of accomplishment when you finally got whatever it was you were grinding for. Do you remember that? It was the most downvoted post in Reddit history. Well, I'd like to thank Jay Clinders from the Salt Mines Discord server for bringing this particular nugget to my attention. He pointed me in the direction of another Reddit post from Reddit user Innumeratus, who is from the Russian community, and wanted to share an interesting forum post written by Malik Katazayev, I'm probably mispronouncing his surname, the founder and general manager of Leicester Studios, also known as Wargaming St. Petersburg, where World of Warships is developed. The post itself was in Russian, but he translated it and he provided a link to the original source, so it could be fact-checked. Where in response to the statement, just by looking at this marathon, it's clear that only 12-year-old tryhards can complete it for free, 35-year-old players won't give a damn, it's the holiday after all, Malik responded, there are people who play a lot, by themselves, or because of other reasons, working schedule or health issues. We encourage them by adding more purpose for these people and by rewarding them with Tier 10 being built. Consider it our obligation to them. If someone is offended and doesn't want to play that much, there are two ways. Buy it for doubloons or don't pay attention to the dry dock. I've simply bought Puerto Rico with my salary card, for example, so the degree of whining won't affect this marathon for sure. If you can just for a second try to wrap your head around the sheer level of contempt both for our intelligence and for us in general as a gaming community encapsulated in that one statement. If you're struggling to understand exactly what he said there, then please allow me to translate. I am a multilingual YouTuber. I am fluent in both English and bullshit. The final sentence in that statement where he says, the degree of whining won't affect this marathon for sure, basically means if you don't like it, fuck off. Because we're not changing anything. Tough shit. But the real kicker in this statement is in the first sentence. There are people who play a lot by themselves or because of other reasons, working schedule or health issues. We encourage them by adding more purpose for these people and by rewarding them with Tier 10 being built. Consider it our obligation to them. Now bear with me here. But the direct translation into English from the bullshit that you just heard is, we have such contempt for our community. We think you are so incredibly fucking stupid that I'm going to stand here and tell you that the only reason the Puerto Rico event is such a fucking grind is because of all those poor unemployed people and all of those people with disabilities who can't work and whose only source of entertainment is playing our great game. And this year for Christmas, we just wanted to give something back to them. Yeah, he really said that. Congratulations, Wargaming. You made it into the big leagues. You are now standing shoulder to shoulder with the kind of Electronic Arts PR drones who go onto Reddit and say that the reason Star Wars Battlefront 2 was the grindfest that it was so that players could feel a sense of achievement and accomplishment. Seriously, Wargaming. I mean, all exaggeration, sarcasm, hyperbole, joking, all of that aside, deadly serious now, okay? This new look of yours, it doesn't look good on you. But it's not too late to change. Take care, folks. I'll catch you next time.